got a good podcast for you. I can say that because I worked my tuchus off to pull together a lot of information. It's going to cover two teams. It's going to cover the Bills and the Dolphins, mostly the Bills. But what we see with Allen since about week 5 on will definitely reflect on the Dolphins and Tua. And while these two quarterbacks are very different, the core element that we can see through Allen over the last few weeks is that the quarterback is the most potent piece on a team. But they're also the most dependent. I've talked with Bills fans for years and Dolphins fans for years about framework, about the ecosystem around a quarterback, the philosophies that a quarterback is being driven through, and how NFL cycles will either accentuate or crush that. So that's what I'm going to do here. Got some really good graphics information. But this is not about Tua is and Allen is. It's more about what OCs are doing in this framework and how the Bills, for about a year and a half, were running things one way. And over the last 6-7 weeks, they've kind of gone in a different direction, where the Dolphins, they were going in the opposite direction of the old Bill-style fumble. And then recently, they've turned hard to another direction, which is pass balance, play actions, screens, and how that facilitates a team and a quarterback. And obviously, Allen is a special quarterback. He's doing things that no one's seen since the early days of football. He's like a fullback who can throw. Tua is not that. But what you got to understand, everybody in the league is taking the ball out of the quarterback's hand because these defenses are dialed in personnel, in design, and philosophy to stop the pass. So you've got to attack the weaknesses. So that's what I'm going to cover here today, guys. But I want to start out with this graphic, Allen's touch share. And I've said this with the Bills fans when I was covering heavy, how there's a sweet spot for Allen. And when he gets over that, you get diminishing returns, and it becomes very diminishing returns. Whereas if you hold him in a certain area of percentage of touches on the offense, he explodes and becomes that star player that we have seen over the years. But it's critical to manage him, and I dare say for any quarterback out there now. So that's the first little bit of the puzzle. You can see there clearly, as Allen's touches as a percentage-wide is high, turnovers are high. And that tends to be, the more you can put a ball in a guy's hand, the more likely he's going to cause, have problems. But it is extraordinarily high, and you can see it just precipitously drops at a certain point. And this is where the sweet spot for Allen should be. The red line is the touches, and the white line is his turnovers. Now, here's an interesting one. I don't know. This is a small sample size, 7 or 8 weeks. But look at this. Screen percentage versus rush RB rush yards. There is a strong positive 0.60 correlation to the number of screens and the production of the run game in Buffalo. Now, this could easily be that the defenses are focusing on the edges, playing themselves wide, and it opens up the interior where the Bills have a tendency to attack. And when they don't do it so much, maybe these defenses are pinning the ears down, not so on the heels, and maybe able to take advantage of it. But it's not just about this. It's the whole soup of screens, play actions, run game, legitimate play action, and how it fuels Allen and really any quarterback. So here's another one. Play action percentage versus RB success. It's a mild positive of 0.28. There is some correlation over this short time frame that play actions allow the run back to have success. Why is that? Maybe they don't buy the run, they drop into pass. I don't know what it is, but it is a piece of the puzzle with the screens. But I'm going to pull it all together to show how pulling the ball out of Allen's hand and then conversely to his hand, you're going to see better production on the offense. And the team and the quarterback And it's not a negative, say, for Allen or Tua, because, like I said, these teams, these defenses are so dialed in that if you're not splitting their attention up, they're going to be so hyper-focused. And for a guy like Allen, when you ask him to carry the ball too much, then there's going to be fumbles because he's not a running back, no matter how good he is. And then say for Tua, there's a chances for him to get on the move and he fumbles the ball or when there's a sack in process. So take a look at this graphic here. I think it is very, 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 very telling. And you could see the red boxes are losses, green boxes are wins. And you can see Allen's touches, team touches. But the key is the one at the right, touch percentage. Week 5 loss, 58%. Allen had his hands on the ball. It was a close one, but they lost. Then 64%, another loss. Week 8, 39%, and that was a very good win. Then you come back the next week against the Chiefs, who many people were thinking were going to lose, 55% and a win. Week 10 against my Dolphins, 66%, and that did not go well for the Bills. Week 11 against Mayfield, 61% with a win. But that is something that a guy like Allen can create these magical games, but there's not a lot of consistency there. And it was an amazing performance that maybe only he can perform. 6 touchdowns. Then week 12, the recent loss, 67%. And what was it? I think it was 13 points, and one of it was a kick return. So you could see clearly the sweet spot is around that 55 or lower percentage. This is where Allen and even Tua, look at Tua as they're pulling the ball out of his hand. Everything seems to kind of work better. And the days that a lot of people remember is the fumble when Manning and Brady cried to the league and you couldn't touch guys, receivers and routes, and the defenses were on their heels, and it was all about throwing the football and the quarterbacks. But I'm going to show you at the end, about 2019 on, the league has changed, and it's like a boa constrictor since 2019 to now, wrapping around the necks of OCs and offenses and quarterbacks, forcing them to have pass balance, legitimate run attack, legitimate play action, and I dare say, looking at this, maybe the screens, and for McDaniel, he throws a lot of screens, and I don't always like them, but maybe there's a rhyme and reason to this. So I'll get into the next graphic here, and you can see bad soup, week 6, 6% screens, 92 RB yards, play action 26%, and 4 turnovers. But then if you go look at his best week, the good soup, you can see 19% screens, 238 yards rushing, 29% play action, Allen 0 turnovers. Now, obviously, the run yards is exorbitant. You can't dictate anything on that, but there's a polarity between these two, and it does play out pretty well. So this is another graphic. Take a look at it here. And so this one, and it's not as pretty. Allen turnovers on the left and rushing yards at the bottom. Obviously, he had 125 yards or better. He had 2 turnovers in one game, 0 in another. The one we just spoke about in week 8, 0 turnovers. But every time he's under 100 yards, he's had multiple turnover games. 4 out of 7. And I think that is pretty indicative. Now, some of those turnovers were him carrying the football and being on a run, especially like week 5, week 6. And so we have to understand that, yeah, they're taking the ball out of Tua's hand, and he's got his flaws, but there's a reason, and that same reason is why a better quarterback, say like Mahomes, who you can see, when he's out of balance like this, he has struggling games. And Allen, who's a better quarterback, when you override these guys, you ask them to do much, especially through the pass game. You don't have the run game to support. You're not bringing those play actions to get that blitz catch a defense thin and get those big plays, and now maybe even use those screens, it just ends up being a very high likelihood the offense will struggle and the quarterback will struggle. And I've shown in the past multiple times how the top 10 rushing attempt teams have 80 to 90% chance not to have a losing season, where the teams that are the bottom 10, they have like 80 or 90% chance to have a losing season. And so you could probably extrapolate this out in games to show that the team that does have the most rushing attempts, and it's not always just because of the rushing attempts, because teams that have the lead will tend to rush a little bit more. But when you look at all this data, it shows when you're running that football, you're running your play actions, you're running the screen, you're keeping the defense guessing, you're keeping the ball out of the quarterback's hands overly, there's going to be success. And you couldn't have two more opposite quarterbacks like Allen and Tua. But yet, Allen was having great success until about week 5, where Brady decided to just go fumble. He lost to the Dolphins, and he said, well, the only thing is I wish I threw it more. And they've kind of run that a few of the weeks since. They had the good win against Chiefs before, and the good win against the Panthers before that. They got the win with Tampa in the fumble system, but the vast percentage says this is not a winner. And when you're throwing the football and you're giving your quarterback 60+ % of the time, it is not going to be successful even for a stud like Allen. And so then if you look at a guy who you could say is maybe a lesser quarterback, I don't want to offend anybody, like Tua or these other guys, and they're holding the ball 60%, what's their chance to be consistent? There is no longer a consistent, viable option to throw the football all day anymore. It's just not part of the cycle. And so it's not about Allen sucking. We'll say we can't. A lot of Bills fans would say, Dolphins fans would say Allen sucked when he was having his struggles up until about 23, and then all of a sudden, oh, he's great and wish Tua was like him. But look at the philosophy that changed around Allen. Look at the philosophy that Tua has been under. Look at the success they've had. We played some good teams, some weaker teams, however you want to slice it, but everything's kind of goes better. It feels better to watch the game when your team is pounding that football, when your team is balanced. And so I think this is a critical thing. I'm going to do a study on Tua to see how these two jive, but it's something that I've gone through multiple times, and I study and restudy, and I present and represent, and I don't think there's any real logical path to say it's not true. Again, this is not to justify Tua. It's not to excuse Allen. But football is the ultimate team game. And if your team is running philosophies that are not in the sweet spot, they're counterintuitive to what the league says is the sweet spot, all quarterbacks will struggle, although a guy like Allen can have these miracle games. But clearly you can see with this season, consistency is not there. So, guys, just keep your eye on it. I see people saying stuff, and I just think some of it's crazy. And I'm not saying I'm always right, but the NFL is now about balance. And if you don't give your quarterback that balance, they'll struggle like Darnold did with the Giants, and now he's not Darnold, Jones, and now he's doing good with the Colts, or Mayfield, now he's doing good with Tampa, or Darnold, who was doing good with Vikings last year, now Seattle. Even Mac Jones. And you look at even Purdy with the 49ers, they always maintain a balance. And it's not to say Purdy's got some amazing stuff. I think he's audibling like 97% of the time. So there are differences, guys, but you have to evaluate this whole thing. And to me, the Bills, they've got an issue. They can't stop the run. And when they get away from the run, it compounds it. The Dolphins look like they are able to stop this run. And if they run the football on offense, not only does it help Tua, not does it help McDaniel, but it does help this defense. So Bills fans, if you want your team to get back on track, look for Allen's percentage to be in the mid-50s to run that football, play action screens. And the same thing with Tua. We're going back to a fun time. Physical offense, running backs. They were paying them $2 and a ham sandwich to play. Now the market is rising because the market says, hey, we need this run game. If the market says it, the statistics say it, the analytics say it, the scoreboard says it, the film you see says it, then you've got to understand the sign of the times. So that's my deal. Hope you enjoyed. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.